PUBG has nearly doubled its player count in the last year and a half, going from roughly 350k peak players to just shy of 800,000 daily. With this huge influx of players, they more than likely fall into one of two categories. They're either returning to the game, or they're brand new. If you fall into one of these two categories, you may have realized this game is freaking rough. You're essentially entering into a prison yard with people who have not stopped playing since 2017, and they're all really good. So to help give you a better fighting chance, in this video, we'll be going over 5 useful tips that you can practice to improve your gameplay, as PUBG is a game that highly rewards repetition, which breeds consistency and makes you a more efficient player on the battlegrounds. To repeat the quote by legendary football coach Vince Lombardi, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. Tip number 1 is warming up. This may seem like a very simple tip, but warming up can be the most effective method of improving gameplay if done correctly. The PUBG training grounds give you a plethora of useful tools that you should be using, like the built-in aim trainer, which is amazing for improving close quarters aim, spray transfers, as well as practicing initial shot accuracy. When using the aim trainer, as you move focus from one target to the next, try to focus on putting your reticle on the head first, shooting in short controlled bursts, rinse, and repeat. It'll take time, but as you continue to practice, you'll notice you're going to get faster at moving between targets, and you'll get a better feel overall and how many shots it takes to drop somebody wearing nothing but level 2 armor. On top of the aim trainer, you should always hit up the 200 meter range. Shooting moving targets in general in PUBG is rather difficult. Not only do you have to worry about controlling the recoil of the gun, you have to make sure you're staying on target as well, which is where this range helps. Pick whatever assault rifle or SMG you're accustomed to, and simply shoot and track. Since every gun has a different bullet velocity, you should be focusing on how far you should be leading your shots when spraying. Now to practice shooting at a distance, let's go to the 400 meter range. Similar to the 200 meter range, we should be focusing on tracking as well as leading shots. Initially, you can focus on hitting center mass on some of the more stationary targets, then focus on tracking and getting used to the lead time of either the DMR or sniper rifle that you have. Would heavily suggest always warming up with the guns you intend to use in game, as well as practicing with different attachments with those guns, since your ideal loadout is never guaranteed. Tip number 2. First shot accuracy. To expand on part of tip number 1, first bullet accuracy is one aspect of aiming in PUBG I feel like I don't hear mentioned enough, especially when it comes to close or mid-range gunfights. PUBG has an incredibly quick time to kill, which is part of what makes this game more difficult than other battle royales like Apex or Warzone, so making sure your reticle and first bullet are right on target during the initial engagement are critical to winning gunfights. The number 1 thing to practice that will improve first shot accuracy is your reticle placement, which you can practice while working on your tracking at the 200 meter range or even in the aim trainer. Track the targets with your mouse, aim and fire. 99% of the time your first bullet will go exactly where your reticle is with regard to the range of the target and the speed it's moving. While in the aim trainer moving from one target to the next, instead of blindly spraying, take that extra millisecond to focus your reticle on the target. As you continue to practice, it will become more fluid and will start to transfer into gameplay. Even with DMRs at the 400 meter range, put your reticle on a relatively close target, aim, and shoot. You'll notice the majority of those first shots are going to hit, but past 100 meters, you'll start to notice how this becomes less relevant, as aiming and shooting further targets becomes more about tracking and leading your shots. Obviously, you shouldn't practice first shot accuracy like this, just using this as an example. Tip number 3 is to practice shooting while standing. There will be countless times where you will be in situations where shooting while standing is an absolute necessity, whether that be peeking over hilltops, window-to-window fights, or shooting over cover. Shooting while standing severely increases vertical recoil, making hitting targets incredibly difficult if you aren't used to it. While on the training grounds, it's always best to simulate real game scenarios. One good way to practice that is at the 200 meter range, we'll be using the stairs that lead up to the platform and practice standing and hitting the closest targets. You should be focusing on your movement, standing up, getting a couple shots off, then getting back to cover. You should be pairing this with some of the warm-ups from tip number 1, practicing sprays on moving targets, as well as practicing your tracking while standing. This will make you feel more comfortable and confident when shooting in those awkward close-quarter situations and mid-range gunfights. Tip number 4 is positioning. PUBG punishes you severely for poor decision-making, like bad rotations, shooting from poor cover, and just simply not thinking ahead. These are all things that come more naturally with more hours played and improved game sense. So in regards to positioning, these are 2 things that you should always remain cognizant of when engaging in gunfights. Shooting from cover. When you see an enemy, take a millisecond to be mindful of your positioning. Shooting from adequate cover, opposed to standing out in the open, will always be the optimal choice. Always exercise trigger discipline and wait to shoot until you're in a position where an escape route is present if shot. If possible, you should never shoot from the same position twice. PUBG is a game where information is key, and once you shoot at an enemy, they've received intel on your location and will more than likely be gunning for your head. When in a gunfight, it's always best to stay on the move and keep the enemy or the enemy team on their toes. And beware of tunnel vision and re-peeking. I know it can be tempting to hone in on your target's range, and right when you think you got it, you're either downed or dead, because while you were sizing up the shot, so is your enemy. Tip number 5, utility. I cannot stress enough the importance of utility, especially to new players. Instead of being an ammo pinata and carrying around 200 plus rounds of 5.56, only carry enough to get you through a gunfight, and instead load up on as many smokes, grenades, or flashes as possible. To give some examples, here we have a player running through an open field, getting shot by not only myself, but another player as well, with nothing to save him but his prayers and this thin-ass tree. Had he used smokes, he could have provided himself more cover and allowed himself to move positions without his attackers knowing. Next, in the solos match, we have myself up against what I would presume to be a newer player who should have killed me. He had circle, positioning, a nice rock to peek over. Had he been an experienced player, I would have easily been dead. But judging by him missing every shot and shooting his M4 on single fire, he allowed me to use all of my utility and create a perfect smoke path up to his rock, restricting visibility, where I was able to sneak up behind him and blast his ass with a Panzer to win the match. Lastly, we have this player running through an open field, which after being shot takes cover behind the hay bale closest to him. With no utility, there are really only two angles for him to peek, either left or the right side of the hay bale. But now let's see a version where he uses utility. Now he's created an incredibly effective smoke wall and can either reposition or even shoot from behind the smoke. This effectively distorts the attacker's line of sight, making the player's next movements unpredictable and increases his chances of surviving the situation. So as you can see, there's plenty of examples where utility, especially smoke grenades, come in handy, so make sure you're carrying plenty with you. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. If you found this video insightful, please feel free to like and sub for more PUBG content. Just want to take a second to say, everybody, thank you so much for all the support lately. Within like the last 3 weeks, I went from 300 to like 1,500 subs. I can't thank you guys enough. I look forward to making more videos, and I will see you guys on the next one.